Hey, I just had this wild realization while watching this demo video for an Ableton plugin. So in the video, they started sequencing a drum loop right in Ableton, and at first, I was confused as to how they were doing that. I mean, nothing was happening on the screen. But then a caption appeared saying they were sequencing the loop using their push 1, and that's when I had an epiphany. I could just sequence drums using one of the machines I already have? Alright, well, that's really obvious, but previously I was making the excuse that I just couldn't sequence drums without a real drum machine, like the Roland TR-8S. And I'd even gotten a few units with sequencers on them just to try to enable me to get into it, but I didn't get into it, because I wasn't inspired by how those units worked, and to me it felt like the shoe barely fit. It wasn't comfortable. So when I experienced someone sequencing drums right on Ableton, my mind was blown. I'm not sure how I had missed that. I've had something that could sequence on Ableton since I've had Ableton. So that's when I started looking deeper into myself and the world around us, noticing all the times we might have the opportunity of our dreams right in front of us without even realizing it. All it would take is just some maneuvering. Somehow, somewhere along my road, I had made the habit to forget about my creativity when I actually need it. If the shoe didn't fit, then I just wouldn't wear it. But in reality, the latest pair of shoes I got actually didn't fit, but I had to wear them. So I modified them until they were comfortable enough to wear, and then they broke in to be one of the most comfy ones I have now. So that was driven by necessity. Following my dreams isn't particularly necessary, so it's usually overpowered by more survival needs like feeling comfortable with myself in a moment. This realization resonates so deeply because it involves everything I'm doing right now. I've always noticed a theme of creativity with my life, and only more recently have I felt like sharing it, since that's what many folks online recommend doing. But I wonder, how could there be instructions for creativity? Doesn't that seem a bit counterintuitive? It felt like the shoe was not fitting. So lately I've been guided toward being intentional instead of setting goals. And what I mean by guided is that certain things in the field will stand out to me, and I'm continually led to new places when I trust where I'm going. So I've had goals to make content about creativity, and I set myself up to force it out of me by posting something every day, and that lasted about as long as the buzz of doing something new and interesting did. But then I just noticed how uncomfortable it is to actually do the work of making new content. I mean, yeah, I might have been weak-willed there, but if I don't feel like making art, then I'll avoid it completely, because then I feel like it's not art, it's just work. Goals without intentions are like cars without any gas. We could have the nicest whip and love being in it, but if there is no fuel, then we're not going anywhere. If goals are what we're after, then intentions are why we're going. So my goal with making content about creativity is to help enable you to live a life with your own agency. And I feel like creativity has and probably will be our main means of evolving, so I do it to support our collective growth. Now, how is where I was getting a bit confused. I felt like I'm still figuring it out myself, like what gives me the authority to sell my knowledge? So I ended up stuck in a rut of self-doubt where I felt so far from my goals and ultimately just disconnected from my intentions. Well, regardless of how that happened, I'm thankful now that I could see where I was and then make the effort to change. So the last part of my realization is that my story is actually how I'll do it. And that's sort of the whole point. We're all each living machines. We take inputs, process them, and express outputs. So the operators of these machines ultimately decide how to use them. So creativity itself is the art of living. It is the skillful practice of how we operate these living bodies. Creating original content is just using whatever's in my life to do something new. Whether that's modifying my shoes to fit well, or creating a whole soundscape on Ableton. It's just something different that'll happen from my efforts. And I think the future will thrive on people driving their living machines fluently and abundantly. So what I study is how we could drive these machines, especially to the point of fluent agency. I mean, we might want financial and time freedom to get to do whatever we want, but is it worth it if it isn't gratifying and fulfilling? With intentionality, we might find that what we have available is actually enough to live a beautiful life. To me, creativity is all about leveraging what's around us to fulfill our intentions. So if I want to make content about creativity, then I could always record my journey of discovering it for myself. And then maybe someone with a similar situation could be moved by what I communicate. And this, to me, represents our modern global culture. We all have stories to tell. And the process of figuring out how to solve those problems in our lives can actually be turned into a business. And this business could be the garage for our living machines to get to safely park at the end of the day. Now, I've looked into trade-free ideologies that live truly freely, and they can absolutely work in small-scale applications like local homesteads. I personally would just prefer to work with the global technology, and that could take some hefty resources. Anyway, many creators right now are saying that the economy is shifting toward them. People are online claiming they're earning a nice living from selling their knowledge, and it actually makes a lot of sense. Large-scale institutions like universities simply are not agile enough to communicate with the rate of change nowadays. It'll take passionate people dedicating their time toward their specific crafts to continue to drive those fields further. So sometimes what is offered can be compared to an entire college course. So it would make sense to price it accordingly. Those resources, though, can then be reinvested back into the field itself to further expand our collective potential. And that is less money sitting around in banks and more money making meaningful change in the world. And all that could happen with you too, if you want. Do you aspire to make meaningful change, but see a huge gap between you and your dreams? I think our living machines are designed to get to build bridges between gaps, so we can effectively navigate wherever it is that we need to. Our living machines are evolving constantly, and we can tune into creating it and just ride the waves that come from it. I'm here to talk about it all, and my journey of discovering what we could do to make it happen. My name is Timoy, and thanks for tuning in. Peace.